The alarm screamed through station terminus like dying animals. Commander ran through the corridors, his boots hitting the metal floor in rhythm with his racing heart. Behind him, the station shook as another plasma bolt struck the shields. "Commander, shields at 30%, someone shouted through his earpiece. Grabbed the wall as the station rocked again. Through the windows he could see them, the ships. They looked like massive crystals floating in space, beautiful and terrible at the same time. Each one gleamed with internal light, pulsing with power that humanity couldn't match. The war had lasted only 3 weeks. 3 weeks since the Empire had found human colonies in what they claimed was their space. 3 weeks since humanity learned they were children playing with toys compared to these crystalline beings. "How many evacuation ships left?" asked, pressing his hand against the communication panel. 12, sir, but only one is fully loaded. The others are still boarding civilians." Closed his eyes. 40,000 people lived on New Colony below. 40,000 miners, farmers, teachers, children. His children were down there too. His wife had gotten them on a ship 2 days ago, or so he hoped. "Tell all defense batteries to focus fire on the lead cruiser. Make them think we're going for a last stand." "Sir, that will drain our remaining shields in minutes." "I know, do it anyway." The young officer hesitated, then nodded and ran to relay the orders. Walked to the observation deck. His reflection stared back at him from the glass, a tired man with gray at his temples, wearing a uniform that had seen better days. The defense batteries opened fire. Streams of missiles and kinetic rounds flew toward the fleet. They were like insects attacking a giant. The ship's shields absorbed everything without even flickering. But it got their attention. Captain pulled the control stick hard to the left. Her frigate, the Morning Star, groaned under the stress. Red warning lights filled her cockpit. "Life support failing in section C through F," her co-pilot said. His name was Minu, and his hands shook as he read the damage reports. "Seal those sections. Route all power to engines and shields." "Captain, we have 200 people in the cargo hold. If we lose life support—" "I know," snapped, then softer, "I know, just do it." She had been a transport pilot before the war. She moved medical supplies and equipment between colonies. Boring work. Safe work. Then the came, and every ship with engines became a warship or an evacuation vessel. The Morning Star had never been meant for either. "Destroyer on our tail," Minu reported. "They're charging weapons." Checked her fuel, almost empty. Their FTL drive was damaged. They couldn't jump to safety. They could barely keep flying. "Send a distress signal. Broadcast on all frequencies." "Captain, that will tell them exactly where we are." "They already know where we are, Minu. Send it." The distress signal went out into the void. Didn't expect an answer. All human military ships were either destroyed or retreating. They were alone. The destroyer closed the distance. Could see it now. A massive crystal structure shaped like a blade, glowing with blue internal light. It was beautiful. She hated that it was beautiful. "They're locking weapons," Minu whispered. Closed her eyes and thought of the 200 people behind her. Families, children, old men and women who had survived the colony bombardment. She had promised to get them to safety. She had promised. War Master stood on the command platform of his flagship, watching the human ship limp through space. His crystalline body reflected the light from the displays around him. Unlike humans with their soft flesh and fragile bones, there were beings of living crystal. They thought in geometric patterns. They valued order, efficiency, logic. "The human vessel is damaged," his tactical officer reported. "Life support failing. Weapons offline, they pose no threat." "Destroy it," said. "Standard procedure." The Empire did not leave enemies alive to rebuild and fight another day. "War Master, they are broadcasting a distress signal." Facets caught the light as he turned. "Let me hear it." The signal came through, crackling with static. A human voice, female, speaking in their simple language that the computers had learned to translate. "This is captain of the transport vessel Morning Star. We are a civilian evacuation ship carrying 200 refugees. Our life support is failing. We have children aboard, please. Anyone who can hear this, we need help." The bridge fell silent. His tactical officer waited for orders. The crew waited. The massive crystal guns of the flagship waited. Had fought in 17 campaigns for the Empire. He had destroyed rebellion fleets, conquered primitive worlds, and enforced order across a dozen sectors. He had never hesitated to follow orders. He hesitated now. "War Master," the tactical officer prompted. Looked at the human ship on his display. It was tiny, fragile, dying. Inside it were beings made of soft flesh who lived for barely a century. They built civilizations in the time it took to reach maturity. They fought with primitive weapons and died in the thousands for causes didn't understand. But they were alive, and they were asking for mercy. "Send them coordinates," said quietly. "Sorry." "Send them coordinates to the Refuge Nebula. It is outside our patrol routes. Tell them to go there. They will be safe." The tactical officer's crystalline structure flickered with confusion. "War Master, our orders are to eliminate all enemy vessels. This is against protocol." "I am aware of protocol, officer. Send the coordinates. Then transmit a supply package to their ship, medical supplies, oxygen canisters, enough to reach the nebula." "War Master, if command learns of this." "Then make sure they do not learn of it. Send the coordinates." The officer hesitated, then obeyed. Watched as the data stream transmitted to the human ship. He watched as his own supplies ejected into space, floating toward the Morning Star. On his display, the human ship's engines flickered back to life. It turned slowly, adjusting course toward the coordinates he had provided. As it limped away, it sent one final transmission. "Thank you, we will remember." 3 simple words in a simple language from a simple species. Didn't know why they affected him. He was crystal and logic and order. He was above such things as sentiment. But he watched the human ship until it disappeared from his sensors. 2 months later, the war ended. Humanity surrendered. The cost was calculated. 43 colonies destroyed, 2 million humans dead, the human fleet reduced to scrap. Was called before the High Command. They had reviewed the battle records. They had found his moment of weakness. "You let an enemy vessel escape," the High Commander stated. His crystalline form was ancient, massive, gleaming with authority. "You provided them with aid. You violated standing orders." "I did," confirmed. "Why?" Considered lying. He considered explaining it in terms of strategy or long-term planning. But they valued truth above all else. "Because they asked," he said simply. The High Commander's facets rotated, processing this. "You are relieved of command. You will serve out your remaining duty cycles at Garrison Station 47. Dismissed." Garrison Station 47 was at the edge of space, a forgotten outpost, a place for failures. Accepted his punishment without protest. As he left the command chamber, he thought of the human ship limping into darkness and wondered if they had survived. He would never know that in a refugee camp in the Refuge Nebula, Captain stood before 200 grateful humans and taught them a name. The name of mercy. The name they would never forget. 50 years had passed since the war ended. 50 years since humanity bent its knee to the Empire. Admiral stood in the hidden chamber deep inside an asteroid, watching holographic displays flicker in the darkness. Around him, 15 other humans sat in silence, waiting for him to speak. They were the council, leaders of the underground movement that they didn't know existed. "The swarm has entered Sector 9, said, gesturing at the star map. Red markers spread across the display like blood in water. They've consumed 3 colony worlds in 2 weeks. Good, someone muttered from the back. Let the crystals burn. His jaw tightened. He understood the hatred. He had been born in a labor camp on controlled Earth. His mother had died in the mines. His father had disappeared after speaking against their overlords, had every reason to hate them. But his grandmother had taught him something else. The don't stop continued. They consume everything, every world, every species, if the fall were next. Then we fight them after they are gone, another council member said. Her name was a scientist who had spent decades studying alien biology in laboratories. We're not ready for a full war. Our fleet is still incomplete. Nodded, I know, but there's something else. He pressed a button and the display changed. It showed a single space station on the edge of territory. Garrison Station 47. It's directly in this path. The room stayed quiet. They all knew what that meant. The High Command has declared the sector a loss, said. They're not sending reinforcements. Everyone on that station will die in 4 days when they arrive. Why are you telling us this? Asked. What's special about this station? Took a breath. Because War Master commands that station. The name hung in the air like a ghost. Even after 50 years, every human knew that name. It was taught in secret schools, whispered in labor camps, passed from parent to child. The Who showed mercy when mercy was a death sentence. My grandmother is still alive, said quietly. She was on the Morning Star. Captain, she's 87 now, and she still tells the story of the crystalline commander who saved 200 lives when he could have ended them. This is about honor, someone asked. We're going to risk everything for one because of a 50-year-old debt. Yes, said simply. Because if we let him die when we could save him, we're no better than the empire that enslaved us. Worse, maybe. We'd be proving them right, that humans are savage, ungrateful creatures who only understand violence. The room erupted in argument. Half wanted to save. Half wanted to let him burn with the rest of the empire. Let them fight it out, knowing that this decision would define what humanity would become. Finally stood, her voice cut through the noise. I vote we save him, not for us, to prove we're better than they think we are. The vote was close, 9-6, but it was enough. Nodded, then we move in 3 days. I'll lead the rescue fleet personally. You're risking the entire resistance for this, someone warned. If they detect our ships, our technology, they'll know we've been building a secret fleet. They'll crush us. I know, said, but some debts have to be paid. Engineer floated in zero gravity inside the skeleton of a warship. Around him, hundreds of other humans worked in silence, welding, assembling, programming. This was Asteroid Base 17, one of 40 hidden construction facilities scattered across human space. For 50 years, humanity had pretended to be broken. They worked in factories, learned technology, and kept their heads down. But in secret, they had been preparing. Had spent his entire adult life in shipyards. He learned how they built their crystal vessels, how their shield systems worked, how their weapons channeled energy through geometric matrices. He memorized everything. Then he came here and taught others how to build something different. The ship in front of him didn't look like a vessel. It was smaller, faster, and covered in stealth plating that had designed himself. Where ships were beautiful geometric patterns, human ships were angular and aggressive, built for speed and surprise. Admiral needs 12 ships ready in 2 days, his supervisor said, appearing beside him. Can we do it? Looked at the half-finished vessel. We can do 8, maybe 9 if we skip some safety checks. Make it 10, this is important. Everything's important. What's special about this mission? His supervisor told him. When he finished, was quiet for a long moment. The one who showed mercy, said softly. My mother told me about him. She was in the refugee camps, said his name was like a prayer. Then you understand why we're doing this. I do, turned back to his work. You'll have 10 ships, I'll make sure of it. far away on Garrison Station 47, stood in his command center and watched death approach. The swarm appeared on sensors as a massive cloud of organic vessels. They didn't build ships, they grew them. Each vessel was a living creature, connected to millions of others in a single hive mind. They consumed entire worlds, breaking down all matter into biological components to grow more swarm ships. Nothing stopped them. Energy weapons burned individual ships, but the swarm simply regenerated. For every ship destroyed, 2 more grew from the remains of consumed worlds. "We have 48 hours until they arrive," his tactical officer reported. The officer was young, barely past his growth cycle. He had been assigned here as punishment, same as everyone on this forgotten station. "Begin evacuation procedures," ordered. "All non-essential personnel to the transports." "War Master, High Command has our request for evacuation ships. They say we're not a priority." His crystalline structure flickered with something close to anger. Not a priority. That was logic for acceptable losses. This station held 3,000 mostly low-caste workers and soldiers who had displeased their superiors. To High Command, they were already dead. "Then we defend the station," said. "We hold as long as we can." "War Master, we have 6 defense platforms and 1 frigate. They have 10,000, we cannot win." "I know." The officer's facets rotated in confusion. "Then why fight?" "Because this station has 3,000 lives. As long as we fight, they live. When we stop fighting, they die. So we fight until we can't fight anymore." The officer processed this. It wasn't logical. It wasn't efficient. It was the kind of thinking that had gotten exiled here in the first place. But the officer saluted anyway. "Understood, War Master. I'll prep the defense platforms." Stood alone in the command center after the officer left. He thought about his long life. 300 cycles of service to the Empire. Battles won, campaigns completed, orders followed. All of it leading to this, dying on a forgotten station for people the Empire had already abandoned. He thought about the human ship from 50 years ago, the Morning Star. He wondered if they had survived, if those 200 refugees had found safety. He hoped they had. It would be nice to think his one act of mercy had meant something. The alarm chimed softly. 47 hours until the swarm arrived. Began reviewing defensive positions, knowing they were useless but doing it anyway. He didn't know that 10 ships were already burning through space toward him at speeds that should have been impossible. He didn't know that an 87-year-old woman named sat in one of those ships, refusing to let anyone convince her to stay behind. He didn't know that humanity was coming to pay its debt. The clock counted down. The swarm approached, and prepared to die with honor, never expecting that honor could be repaid. Captain Jin gripped the controls of his ship, the Silent Arrow, as it cut through space at speeds that made his crew nervous. Behind him, 9 other human vessels flew in perfect formation, their stealth systems engaged. 6 hours to the station, his navigator reported. "Swarm is 8 hours out. We're cutting this close." "We'll make it," Jin said. He had to believe that. Admiral had trusted him with this mission, and Jin wouldn't fail. In the seat behind him, Old sat strapped in, her weathered hands gripping the armrests. At 87, she should have been in a care facility on Earth, not rushing toward a battle zone. But when told her about the mission, she had insisted on coming. "He saved my life," she had said. "I won't let him die alone." Jin checked his sensors again. They didn't know they were coming. Human stealth technology was still a secret, something the Empire wouldn't discover until it was too late. "Captain, we're receiving the station's automated broadcasts," the communications officer said. "Playing now." His voice filled the bridge. Even through the translator, Jin could hear the resignation in it. "This is Garrison Station 47. We are under imminent threat from hostile forces. All vessels are advised to avoid this sector. This will be our final transmission." Closed her eyes, and Jin saw tears on her wrinkled face. "Increase speed," Jin ordered. "I don't care if the engines scream. We get there in 5 hours." On the station, watched his tactical displays with the calmness of someone who had accepted death. The swarm was now visible on long-range sensors, a massive cloud of organic ships that blotted out the stars. "Defense platforms are online," his tactical officer reported. "All personnel are in secure positions." "Good," looked around his command center. 50 worked at their stations, their crystalline bodies reflecting the blue light of the displays. They were all young, all exiled here for minor infractions. None of them deserved to die. "War Master," a voice said from his communication panel. It was the station's medical officer. "The civilians are requesting permission to send you a message." "Granted." The displays changed, showing the faces of citizens, workers, engineers, maintenance crews. Over 2,000 of them gathered in the station's central hub. One stepped forward, an elderly whose crystal structure had dulled with age. "War Master, we know we cannot survive what is coming, but we wanted to thank you for trying." Felt something crack inside his carefully controlled emotions. "I have failed you. High Command abandoned us. I could not convince them." "You stayed," the old interrupted. "You could have taken the frigate and escaped alone, but you stayed. That is enough." The others nodded, their crystalline bodies chiming softly in agreement. Had no words. He simply bowed his head in acknowledgement. The display went dark, stood alone with his thoughts until the tactical officer spoke. "War Master, we're detecting unknown energy signatures. Multiple vessels approaching at high speed." Attention snapped to the tactical display. 10 ships, small and fast, were heading directly toward the station. Their design was unlike anything in the database. "Are they scouts?" he asked. "Negative, sir. These readings are. War Master, these are human vessels." "That's impossible. Humans don't have FTL-capable warships." "I'm reading power signatures that match human fusion technology but modified. War Master, they're hailing us." Hesitated, "Put them through." The display flickered, and a human face appeared. A young male, wearing a military uniform that didn't recognize. "This is Captain Jin of the Human Resistance Fleet. We're here to evacuate your station." His crystalline structure pulsed with confusion. "This is a military station. You are violating Imperial space. Leave immediately." "Not without you," another voice said. An old human female pushed her way into the view. Her face was lined with age, but her eyes were sharp and determined. Stared at her. There was something familiar about her, but from 50 years ago, all humans had looked alike to him. "My name is," the old woman said. "You saved my ship, the Morning Star. You gave us coordinates to safety when you could have destroyed us. You gave us supplies, you gave us life." Memory crystallized in his mind. The human distress call, the fragile ship limping through space, the decision that had cost him everything. "You survived," he said softly. "Because of you. Now we're returning the favor. We have 10 ships in 6 hours before they arrive. We can evacuate everyone on that station." "This makes no sense," said. "I am your enemy. Your people suffer under our rule. Why would you risk yourselves for us?" Smiled and saw the same determination that had kept her flying 50 years ago. "Because someone once showed us that enemies can choose mercy. We're proving that mercy deserves loyalty. If the Empire discovers you have this fleet, let them discover it. We're not leaving without you." Looked at his tactical officer, who was frozen in shock. He looked at the display showing the approaching. He looked at its aged face on his screen. "This is illogical," he said. "Probably," agreed. "Are you coming or not?" The evacuation was chaos. Human ships docked at every available port, their crews streaming onto the station. They worked alongside confused, loading civilians onto transports with an efficiency that surprised everyone. Lieutenant Jin's tactical officer coordinated the evacuation with military precision. Section C clear, moving to Section D. Come on, people, we have 4 hours. The civilians moved slowly, uncertain, still processing that humans, their subjugated slaves, had crossed half the galaxy to save them. Walked through the station corridors until she found in his command center. He was transferring data, ensuring nothing critical fell into hands. "You should evacuate," said without turning around. "There is no reason for you to be here." "There's every reason," replied. She moved to stand beside him. Even aged and bent, she barely reached his crystalline chest. "I wanted to see you face to face, to say thank you. I did what any being should do when asked for mercy." "No, you did what most beings can't do. You chose compassion over orders. That's rare in any species." The War Master stopped working and looked down at the old human. "I was punished for that choice, exiled, my career ended." "And you'd do it again, wouldn't you?" Considered lying, but he was, and truth mattered. "Yes. That's why we're here." An alarm blared through the station. Jin's voice crackled over the communications system. "Swarm just accelerated. They'll be here in 30 minutes. We need to leave now." The evacuation became a frantic rush. Humans ran together through the corridors, helping each other, carrying the young and old. The species barrier dissolved in the face of approaching death. On the Silent Arrows Bridge, Jin watched the swarm approach on sensors. It was massive, blotting out entire sections of space. "We're not going to make it," his navigator whispered. "Yes, we will," Jin said. "All ships prepare for emergency departure. Combat Formation Delta." "Captain, we're not a military fleet. We're evacuation ships. Today we're both. Ready weapons. We're about to show these things what humans can do." The last transport sealed its hatches. Was on the Silent Arrow, standing on the bridge beside, watching as his station, his home for 50 years, prepared to die. They arrived early. 10,000 swarmed toward the station like locusts. But between them and the station flew 10 human vessels, small and fast, darting through space with moves that seemed impossible. Jin opened fire, not with energy weapons that they had adapted to. He used kinetic rounds, simple, old-fashioned projectiles moving at relativistic speeds that had never encountered them. The first exploded, then another, then 10 more. "All ships fire at will," Jin shouted. "Buy us time to escape." The human fleet danced through space, hitting and running, using tactics that were chaotic and unpredictable. The swarm, used to ordered formations, couldn't adapt fast enough. "Evacuation ships are clear," reported. "We can run." "Keep firing, make them remember this." For 20 minutes, 10 human ships held off 10,000. They lost the Dawn Breaker when it took 3 with it in a suicide run. They lost the Earth's Fury when its reactor went critical, taking out an entire cluster of enemies. But when they finally turned and ran, jumping to FTL with the right behind them, they had saved every single life on that station. 3,000 refugees rode in human ships, watched over by human crews, and began to understand that everything they had believed about humanity was wrong. The Imperial Palace was a structure of pure crystal, reaching into the sky like a frozen flame. Inside its council chamber, the most powerful beings in the Empire gathered to decide humanity's fate. Ambassador Na stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by counselors whose crystalline bodies reflected the harsh light from above. She wore a simple gray suit, looking small and fragile among these beings who could crush her with a thought. But Na didn't show fear. She had survived labor camps, watched friends die in the mines, and lived her entire life under rule. She had nothing left to fear. "You violated our borders," the High Commander said. His massive form dominated the chamber. "You possess military technology you were forbidden to develop. You hid an entire fleet from our surveillance. These are acts of war." We saved 3,000 lives, Na replied calmly, including War Master, who many of you exiled to die. We risked everything to honor a debt from 50 years ago. If that is an act of war, then perhaps war has a different meaning than I thought. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Stood to one side, still in shock from everything that had happened. Beside him stood Admiral, who had personally delivered the refugees to imperial authorities. You built weapons in secret, another counselor accused. You planned rebellion. We planned survival, said, stepping forward. For 50 years, you've treated us like animals. We worked your mines, built your ships, and died in your factories. Did you think we'd do that forever without preparing for the day we might need to defend ourselves? You admit to planning rebellion. I admit to being ready for it, but we're not here to rebel today. We're here to offer you an alliance. The chamber fell silent. Even the High Commander's crystalline structure froze in surprise. An alliance, he said finally. You who we conquered, who serve us. The don't care who conquered who, General said, walking to stand beside. She was a tall woman with scars on her face from mine collapses. They'll consume you. Then they'll consume us, unless we stop them together. They are a minor threat, the High Commander said dismissively. We will contain them. Will you? Doctor stepped forward, holding a data pad. I've analyzed the biology. Your energy weapons are useless against them. They adapt within hours. Every ship you destroy feeds their biomass. You're not fighting them, you're feeding them. And you can stop them, a counselor asked skeptically. We can try. Human weapons are different from yours. We use kinetic force, chemical reactions, nuclear fusion. Things they haven't adapted to. But we need your shield technology, your sensors, your speed. Alone, we both lose. Together, we might survive. Empress had been silent until now. She was young for a ruler, barely 2 centuries old. Many counselors questioned her ability to lead. But she had risen to power during the crisis, and she understood that old ways of thinking would kill them all. What are your terms? She asked Na directly. Full citizenship for all humans in space, equal rights, equal representation, an end to forced labor and second-class status. In exchange, we give you our fleet, our tactics, and our complete loyalty. Impossible, the High Commander said. We cannot grant such. Forces have breached the secondary defense line. An aide rushed into the chamber, his crystalline structure flickering with panic. 3 systems from the estimated arrival in 6 days. The chamber erupted in chaos. Counselors who had been dismissing the threat moments ago now faced the reality of extinction. Empress raised her hand and silence fell. She looked at Na at standing quietly to the side. War Master, the Empress said, you saved human lives when ordered to destroy them. They crossed the galaxy to save yours. Do you believe this alliance can work? Stepped forward, every eye in the chamber focused on him. He had been silent, ostracized, forgotten. Now his voice would decide the fate of 2 species. I believe, he said slowly, that I have spent 3 centuries believing we're superior because we valued logic over emotion. But logic tells us to abandon allies when convenient. Logic told us to leave my station to die. Humans came anyway, driven by something we dismissed as weakness, honor, loyalty, gratitude. He turned to face the High Commander. Perhaps we were wrong. Perhaps the ability to feel obligation to others, even enemies, is not weakness. Perhaps it is the only thing that separates civilization from extinction. You would trust humans with our empire's future, the High Commander demanded. I would trust them with my life. I already have. They did not fail me. Empress stood. I accept the human terms, full citizenship, equal rights. Let the record show that humanity is no longer conquered. They are our partners. Your Majesty, this is. Final, General, show us this fleet you've been hiding. The asteroid field designated as Hidden Base 17 had never seen so many vessels. Imperial ships hung in space around the secret human shipyards, their sensors recording everything. General floated beside an admiral, watching as human-built warships powered up for the first time in front of their former masters. 10,000 ships, the admiral said in disbelief. You built 10,000 warships under our watch and we never knew. We're good at being underestimated, said with a slight smile. The ships were nothing like vessels. Where craft were elegant crystal structures, human ships were angular and aggressive. They looked dangerous because they were designed to be dangerous. Your weapons technology is primitive, the admiral observed. Chemical propulsion, kinetic rounds, nuclear warheads. Primitive works when the enemy has never seen it before, replied. Your energy weapons are more advanced, but they adapt to them. Our primitive weapons will surprise them. And what do you need from us? Your shields can take hits that would destroy our ships. Your sensors can track targets we can't see. Your FTL drives are faster than ours. Give us those, and we'll give you weapons that can actually hurt them. Over the next 5 days, an unprecedented collaboration began. Engineers worked alongside humans, combining technologies that should have been incompatible. Crystal shield matrices were grafted onto human hulls. Kinetic cannons were linked to targeting systems. Fusion reactors were boosted with crystalline power conduits. Doctor worked day and night with scientists, studying biology and developing new weapon types. They discovered that we're vulnerable to intense heat, not the clean energy heat of weapons, but the dirty, chaotic heat of chemical explosions. We're going to cover missiles in magnesium and phosphorus, explained to her counterpart. When they penetrate they'll burn at 5,000 degrees. They can't adapt to that fast enough. This is inelegant, the scientist said. This is effective. Sometimes inelegant wins. On the command deck of what would become the flagship, Admiral and War Master stood together, reviewing tactical displays. We'll command jointly, Empress had decreed. One human, show both our peoples that this alliance is real. Looked at, can we trust each other, really? You saved my life when you had no reason to, replied. I think trust has already been established. I'm going to make mistakes. Human tactics aren't clean like yours. And I'm going to hesitate when logic says to sacrifice ships to win battles. Tactics aren't flexible like yours. Perhaps together we balance each other. Smiled and extended his hand. Looked at it, understanding the human gesture, and grasped it carefully. His crystalline hand could have crushed human bones, but he held gently. Partners said. Partners agreed. Above them, the combined fleet assembled. 10,000 human warships, 5,000 cruisers, 15,000 vessels representing 2 species that had been enemies 5 days ago. They were coming. They had consumed 100 worlds. They had never been stopped. But they had never faced humanity's chaos combined with precision. They had never fought an enemy that could feel both rage and logic, that could be both ruthless and honorable. The fleet prepared to jump to the Threshold Nebula, where they would make their stand. In the command center, and stood side by side, representatives of 2 different ways of thinking, united by a simple truth. Sometimes mercy was the most logical choice of all. And sometimes the debt of gratitude was worth dying for. The Threshold Nebula burned with colors that shouldn't exist, purple and green gases swirling around newborn stars. It was beautiful. It was also the last place the Alliance would make their stand. Fleet Admiral stood on the bridge of the Unity, the flagship jointly commanded by humans, and beside him, War Master studied the tactical displays with his crystalline form pulsing slowly. Enemy contacts on long-range sensors, the tactical officer reported. She was human, but her station was shared with a counterpart. Every position on every ship in the fleet was mixed now. 50,000, maybe more. Felt his stomach drop. 50,000. Their intelligence had estimated 30,000 at most. They were outnumbered more than 3-1. "All ships to battle positions," ordered calmly. "Deploy the hybrid fighter squadrons." The hybrid squadrons were Captain Wu's idea. Human pilots paired with navigators in small, fast fighters that combined both species' strengths. Human creativity with precision. They called them Mercy Wings in honor of the act that had brought two species together. Watched the fighters launch from carrier ships. Thousands of small craft, each one carrying both human and crew. He hoped they'd be enough. "They're coming through the nebula," said. "The gas clouds will disrupt both our sensors and theirs." "Good, we'll use that," activated the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, remember your training. Humans, don't think, react. Don't hesitate, trust your instincts. We're stronger together than we ever were apart." The swarm emerged from the purple gas like a nightmare made real. Each was a living creature, pulsing with biological energy. They moved as one mind, adapting and learning with every second. "Target the Hive Prime," Doctor's voice came through from the science vessel. "It's coordinating them. I've isolated its quantum signature, transmitting coordinates now." Looked at the display. The Hive Prime was buried deep in the center of the swarm, protected by thousands of. "That's a suicide run," he said quietly. "Yes," agreed, "which is why we both laid it. If we both die, then Captain Wu takes command, but I think we have a chance." Turned to face. "Humans taught me something. Sometimes the illogical choice is the right one." Nodded, "and taught us that logic can find a path through chaos. Let's use both." The first wave of hit the Alliance fleet like a hammer, but this time they faced something new. Human ships didn't hold formation like vessels. They scattered, regrouped, attacked from unexpected angles. Shields protected them while human weapons tore through hulls that had never encountered kinetic rounds. Captain Wu's Mercy Wings dove through the swarm like silver lightning. His flagship, the Grandmother's Promise, named for Old, who watched from the medical frigate, led a squadron of paired fighters. "Human pilot, break left," his navigator shouted. "Navigator, target those three clustering." "Targeting, fire on my mark, 3-2, now." The fighter released a spread of missiles covered in magnesium and phosphorus. When they hit, they burned so hot they couldn't regenerate fast enough. They died screaming across all frequencies. "But they were learning fast. They're adapting to our kinetic weapons," reported from the science vessel. "We have maybe 30 minutes before they develop countermeasures." "Then we finish this in 29 minutes, said. "All capital ships, formation Delta 7, we're punching through to the Hive Prime." "That formation requires perfect synchronization," warned. "Can your people do it?" "Can yours?" They looked at each other and smiled. It was a human expression that had learned. "Let's find out together," said. The combined fleet reorganized. Cruisers formed a crystalline wedge, their shields overlapping. Human warships tucked in behind them, weapons charged. It looked like a spear made of light and metal, aimed at the heart of the swarm. "Charge," ordered. They dove into the swarm like a blade into flesh, swarmed them from all sides, but the shields held. Human weapons fired continuously, clearing a path. "Shields at 60%. Keep going. 40%. Don't stop." They lost ships. The Iron Mountain took 3 head-on and exploded. The Crystal Song sacrificed itself to block a flanking attack, but the formation held. "Hive Prime in range," shouted, transmitting targeting data. Saw it on his display, a massive 3 times the size of any other, pulsing with the quantum frequencies that controlled the entire swarm. Kill it, and the swarm would collapse into chaos. "All ships, synchronized firing solution," said. "We need to hit it with everything at once. If we just wound it, it will adapt." "Human ships ready," reported. "Ships ready," confirmed. They both reached for the firing control. Their hands, one flesh, one crystal, touched the button together. "Fire," 15,000 ships fired as one. Energy beams and kinetic rounds, plasma bolts and nuclear warheads, everything the Alliance had created together converged on a single point. The Hive Prime tried to adapt, tried to regenerate, tried to evolve. It failed. The massive exploded in a wave of biological matter that spread through the nebula, and with it died the controlling intelligence of the swarm. The remaining went mad. Without the Hive Prime's coordination, they attacked each other, consumed each other, fled in random directions. Some tried to form new hive minds, but human fighters hunted them down before they could organize. "Swarm is breaking apart," the tactical officer reported, her voice shaking with disbelief. They're running." The bridge erupted in cheers. Humans and celebrated together, barriers forgotten in the joy of survival. Slumped in his chair, exhausted, stood beside him, his crystalline structure flickering with colors that meant satisfaction in emotional language. "We did it," said. "We did it together," corrected. 10 years later, the memorial stood in the center of what was now called Unity Station, built in the Threshold Nebula where the great battle had been fought. It was a sculpture of two hands clasping, one human, one cast in crystal and titanium. The inscription below read, "They showed humans mercy once. Humanity showed the universe what legendary truly means." Admiral, now retired, stood before the memorial with, who had become the Federation's first Joint Chief of Defense. They came here every year on the anniversary. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't shown mercy that day?" asked. "Every day," replied. "The Morning Star would have died. Those 200 refugees would have died. Your grandmother would have died and you would never have been born. That would have consumed us both." One act of compassion changed everything. "Not just my act. Your grandmother could have chosen hatred. Your people could have chosen revenge. Instead, they chose to honor a debt to one enemy soldier. That choice saved everyone." A group of young students walked by, humans and studying together at the new Integration Academy. They didn't see differences between species anymore. To them, the war was ancient history. "My grandmother passed away last year," said quietly. "I know. I attended her memorial. She was 97, correct?" "Yes. She told me something before she died. She said the day you saved her ship, she thought you were an angel. Then she learned you were punished for saving her, and she realized you were something better, a good person making a hard choice." Crystalline structure pulsed with something that might have been sadness. "I wish I could have told her that she inspired everything that came after. That scared transmission from a dying ship changed how I saw the universe." "She knew, trust me, she knew." They stood in silence, watching the young students laugh and study together. The Federation was still new, still finding its way. But it was built on a foundation stronger than any military technology, mutual respect earned through sacrifice. "The universe is a better place than it was," said finally. "Because someone chose mercy when mercy was weakness," agreed. "And because someone chose loyalty when revenge was easier." They clasped hands, flesh and crystal, human and partners in a future their ancestors couldn't have imagined. Somewhere in the memorial hall, preserved in a crystal case, sat a piece of the original Morning Star, the ship that had broadcast a desperate plea 50 years ago. Beside it was old command badge from when he was exiled. Two relics from a darker time, now symbols of the greatest alliance the galaxy had ever known. The legendary story of how mercy sparked loyalty, and loyalty forged an empire built not on conquest, but on the radical idea that compassion could be strength. And it all began with 3 simple words: "Please, we need help." Words that one being chose to answer, and another chose to remember.